Hey, switch it up. Switch. Hey, yeah. Don't give a fuck.
Okay. Welcome to another episode of Cap and No Cap. I am your host, Kevin C. Meggett. I have three outstanding women. We're going to give a big round of applause for the first two who's making their way on the show for the very first time. So let's welcome Sheba Simpson. Welcome to Cap and No Cap. And we also have LaToya Benjamin, who's joining us for the first time. Let's give her a round of applause for being on Cap and No Cap. And our third guest isn't a stranger to the show. Let's welcome back Miss Shanequa Moore. Welcome back, Shanequa. All right. So, as you see, I got the no capping face mask on. Got to keep yourselves protected. And you could come on to, I'm mostly on Facebook for the most part. And inbox me. You could get them. They're $6 each or 2 for $10. So now let me take this off so you can see my face. All right. No cap. All right, ladies, welcome. Welcome to Cap and No Cap. I'm very honored to have all three of you on here. You're outstanding. I was doing a little bit of my homework on you, and you have an outstanding resume. And from what I understand, all three of you guys are kind of running for to become an elected official, with Miss LaToya Benjamin having a special election on Tuesday. Is that correct?
That is right on Tuesday. And early voting is happening right now.
Okay. Wow. So what part of you're running for city council?
Yep, city council for the 31st district. So that's Far Rockaway, Edgemere, Laurelton, Rosedale, Springfield Garden, Arverne.
Okay. All right. And how many people are running with you?
Man, we have about 9 candidates right now.
Figured that.
Four serious ones.
I figured that.
I think I got a beat though.
You know, how many you have go in your
12.
Wow. You gotta be kidding me. Well, let me get this right. All of them, you know, with the narrative with people that are running for office seems to always be the same narrative. I've always wanted to be a public servant.
No.
What is it?
I just got tired of the elected officials making promises and they didn't keep them, and then would laud themselves saying how much they've done for the community, and our community is still messed up.
You're absolutely right. And what's ironic, you know what they do? And I mean, maybe it's universal. I know they do it in my district. What they'll do is they'll show their faces on special days like Thanksgiving, Christmas, back to school, and they'll give you turkeys and book bags and essentially this is your money paying for this. No one really understands that, but the conditions of the community is just deplorable. Yeah. I mean, I'm speaking for my particular district, and but I'm sure that that's the way business is ran in politics, or business as usual. You know what I mean? So give me a little background on yourself. Let's start with Miss LaToya Benjamin. Where are you from?
So I'm from Southside Jamaica, Queens. Born and raised. So, you know, when you guys travel to the airport, you ever came out of JFK, that is Southeast Queens. So I've been a lifelong resident here for all of my life, native New Yorker. Kind of went to school here. I didn't get a chance to go away. So, you know, I got my associates, my bachelor's, my master's from CUNY. And I consider myself just a person, around the way girl, right? Okay. And I bring a different lens to my campaign because, you know, I'm completely grassroots. I've been solely backed by the community, but I'm also, my current role, I serve as Director of Economic Development for the local legislature for my district. And I was not backed, I was not backed by the establishment, which is fine. And I think it's important to have someone who understands, government and understands the culture of politics as it is today, and how we need to use our political power now more than ever to create the economic and social changes that we say we want to see. I don't think we can afford to sit back and watch business as usual, political status quo, and that's going to have to come with an energy shift. And sometimes that's culturally, or in New York, where my district is generational.
That's very refreshing to hear you say that, because one of the things that I do, one of the challenges that I have is that we have groups of people and they're all excelling in this society. But I don't know what your background is, but I'm a foundational Black American, and I look at my group of people as being, they fell below the wayside, and a lot of it has to do with economics. And so to hear you say that we need an economic impact in the community, it's very, bravo to you. I'll definitely give you a round of applause for that. But not too many people understand that. You know what I mean? So.
Right. I think if you took like foundational Black, of native from the South, right? Like our family's been in this country for.
My family's from Charleston and Edisto Island in South Carolina.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, absolutely. And so, my grandparents migrated from the South to New York when, Jim Crow was just so bad. Similar to immigrant stories, right? They migrated from the South to the North for a better opportunity, and saved her money, then brought all her brothers and sisters up here. And, here we are,
Right.
in terms of New York. So I think it's very important to use, with us having that context of our history, it's very important for Black Americans to step up and really understand politics. When you think about what was happening, it's Happy Black History Month, everyone. But when we think about what was happening in this country, in the 60s, when, Black people really started to have political power, we're still talking about these same issues till this day. And now with the COVID pandemic, the Black community has been hit drastically in New York. My district was the first place where the COVID pandemic broke out. And I worked in government during this time. So when people traditionally pass away, it's common courtesy for an elected official to send out a condolence letter. Right. The names were rolling in so fast, I couldn't keep up. It was like the most traumatic experience you ever seen. In addition to having family pass away back to back from the same virus. So when you look at what we just lived through, and thinking about the necessity of having efficient government to provide the resources that we need to combat a pandemic, it's not the time for us to not have transparency in our local political systems. So in order for us to create that change, we have to step up and speak up. And sometimes that's hard because you don't have that support. Oftentimes when we talk about politics in New York, it can be very dangerous. And especially when you're talking about young Black women like us.
I'm not young.
Girl, you look young to me.
Look young to me too.
Black don't crack, right? Because you're just glowing over there.
It's the lighting.
I love it. So yeah.
But go ahead. You were doing great, LaToya.
Yeah, so no, it's just very important for us to understand politics, to understand how politics influence outcomes and decisions. And, I'm a policy major, so I look at policy, I was always tired of seeing, growing up here in New York, one part of Queens looked different from another part of Queens. I didn't understand why some parts of the Bronx looked the same part of Brownsville, Brooklyn. Like just growing up here in New York, just didn't understand how some parts looked better than others. And I always wanted to figure out who was making these decisions. I had a youth camp, a community center that I used to go to print out my homework because we didn't have the internet growing up. And I went one time and it was closed. And I went again, it was closed again. So I had to walk like an extra mile or so just to get to the library. But they ended up shutting that community center down and turning it into a liquor store. And I remember being about 10, 9, like think about a child, right? I remember being a child and saying to myself, who made that decision? Like who literally took the closest place I had to do my homework and literally turn it into a liquor store? And you know, the children that I used to go to that center, some of them still hang out at that same commercial space, but it's just not a center anymore. Think about how many lives could have changed, or how much information could have been shared more into that community, to the development of the youth, if that service was still there. And those are simple decisions that are made in government that are life and death in many urban communities like ours. And so I think it's important for new voices to be heard and new energy to be felt.
And I'm feeling your energy, and I hear your voice loud and clear. And I mean, that's what you're bringing to the table is just, it's remarkable. It's awesome. And it's very well needed. The thing is, we have to really work together as a collective. Like one of the biggest struggles that I find, and then I kind of want to move on to with Sheba. And one of the issues that I find is that foundational Black Americans, you have different groups of people. You have Hispanics. So Puerto Ricans will work together as a collective for Puerto Rican causes. Jamaicans will work together for as a cohesive towards West Indian causes. But when we even say, well, we're going to work together for our cause, we're beat down. Like it's almost like we're shamed to be foundational Black Americans. And, you know, like I kind of want to take that narrative back. I love the diaspora. Sometimes I just question, does the diaspora love us? You know, I feel like like Dr. King has said in a speech, I believe it was his Have a Dream speech. He said that the Negro is exiled in his own country. And that's the God's honest truth. So Sheba, what do you think about that?
Well, let me just give you some background. My maternal family is from Vicksburg, Mississippi, where the tide of the Civil War changed. And I'm proud to say that my family had a role in that. My mom was brought here by my great-grandmother and my uncle, which was my great-grandmother's son, here to New York. And I'm thankful for that, because I know that my spirit could not have lasted in Mississippi, because I am, when my mom was pregnant with me, she was a Black Panther. And so from the womb to the tomb, I'm always going to be about my people. So it's very disheartening when I hear my people say that we are so disjointed, and it's so sad to see it. But I also know that it is what the system has set up for us to be like this. You said everyone is united, but from 1619, when the first 20 enslaved people came to Comfort Point in Virginia, the idea was to separate us, right? And then we had the Bacon Rebellion, when the elite said, oh no, we can't have the poor white people and the poor Black people rising up together. So they started caste systems, and they started telling white people that they were better than us. And so that's how that started, right? And so that's how we got divided. And then we have, you know, if you believe the tale of Willie Lynch, you know, and him creating this book on how to break or to separate Black people by color, you know, by position. And that has come down through the generations. And so people don't understand that trauma lives within our DNA. And the systems are set up to create division. First, it was the separation of our families at the slave block, right? And then it was, once we were emancipated, so-called emancipated, people were so disrupted, it was all for yourselves. And then we have black holes, we have Jim Crow, and now we have mass incarceration and high levels of drug addiction. And this is systematically and purposely done to keep us separated. When Herbert Hoover said that the greatest threat to this country is the unity of Black people, if someone can think of us being united as the greatest threat to this country, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to do everything possible, and they have done everything possible to continue to keep us separated. However, I have always said that I love young people because I knew that the generation after my generation, and then now I guess they say the General Z's, Generation Z's, they're standing up and they're saying no more, no mas. We are not afraid anymore. And it gives me so much pride, because I used to think that I had been born too early, because I've always been about that life, saying what needed to be said, even when it was uncomfortable. And even when it may have prevented me from getting a position or a friendship dying, because at the end of the day, if you're not true to yourself, you can't be true to anything, and you damn sure can't be true to a cause. Right. And so we have to understand that when we listen to young people, you hear a lot of truth, and you hear a lot of power, and you hear a lot of, we're not taking this anymore, and we're going to stand up for what is right. And so that's why I'm so proud of the young people. I'm proud to be running in this moment, because I do believe this is our Harriet Tubman moment in history. We're going to either go forward, and I intend to go forward, and I'm taking anyone who is strong enough and believes in unity and equality for all people along with me. So I understand what LaToya is saying. I understand that the voice of the people is being heard now, and that we're going to try to create a democracy that reflects the ethnicities in this country.
I so appreciate that, and you're absolutely right. I mean, one of the things that I'm about freedom, justice, and equality. The truth is not popular. It's just not popular to be truthful. But I can't be any other way but truthful. Our people are suffering. And I feel honored to be in all three of your presence, because according to the Biden-Harris administration, it was foundational Black American women that made the difference in this election. And so when I heard that the Biden administration was looking to put together legislation to make immigrants legal, I felt a way. I really felt I felt a way. Number one, you did it on Black History Month. And then two, I don't feel like other groups should be prioritized over us. We have the longest standing issue in this country. This is unresolved business, and it's been unresolved business for so long. And I'm going to ask Shanequa, how do you feel about the Biden and Harris administration with respects to prioritizing other groups over us, such as LGBT and immigrant causes?
Yeah, it's a great question. And first, I want to say thank you for having all of us here at this and gathering us together on this Friday night. I think it's always good when we come together and have these conversations, raise awareness, and have these kind of dialogues. So thank you, Kevin, for the work that you're doing in the community and for just being consistent, because not everyone can do that. So thank you. To your question, I want to just sort of backtrack this a little bit and just sort of spinning off on what Sheba and also with LaToya was talking about earlier. When we think about Black people, foundational Black people in this country, we've been prostituted, right? We're the ones that have really formed this country. We've put in billions into building the economy of this nation. But for some reason, we have always been the last to receive anything. When you think about historically what we have been through throughout the generations, we have been, just systemically oppressed. We've been the only group, and I try not to put division between foundational Black and other Black, but we have to be real and tell the story of what foundational Black people go through. And the fact of the matter is, there is something called intergenerational trauma, and Sheba was touching on it. And that is something that is sustained throughout the generations that foundational Black people are going through. When we think about our other brothers and sisters that are Black, that are immigrants that come to this country, a lot of them don't have the awareness of what our foundational Blacks have done for us to get where we are. I remember talking to a friend that was African, and I was asking him something like, so do you remember Rosa Parks? And he's like, who's that? And I was so offended because I felt like, you're in America, you're making thousands of dollars a month, and you have no clue who this Black foundational African-American, civil rights movement woman was, but here you are profiting off the work of our ancestors. I have a problem with that when we are seen as lazy, when we are seen as not good enough, when we're constantly shut out of rooms. I have a problem when we are still systemically oppressed in every system. I have a problem that when we join together, there's a problem, but when other groups of people join together, they're celebrated. And I think that it's also really sad. George Floyd last year on his death awakened the consciousness of this nation finally. But we've always known that there was systemic racism. It's now that we've been talking about white privilege and white supremacy and all that, but we've known this. We've lived this our entire lives. We know every single day that we're Black, and we knew that being a foundational Black person was different from being someone that was Black that didn't come from America, because you were always favored. There was always better treatment. So I think we've always been at the bottom of society, and it makes you wonder why haven't we been prioritized? Why hasn't there been reparations? It's been so many centuries, and still no reparations. When is it going to happen? I think it's going to take us coming together as people like you, Kevin, and introducing really bold legislation to say, this is what we require and this is what we need, and to not take no for an answer, but to be skillful, strategic, and to come together to push this type of legislation so that we get what we deserve. I have a lot more to say, but I'm gonna stop right there. And then,
No, that's cool. And I so appreciate it. And I'm glad you touched on, because one of the things that I'm trying to do, there's actually two things that I'm putting in play right now. The first is I have a resolution that I'm going to be putting out with respects to for New York City. It's a piece that I would hope, if all of you guys are going for city council, you would consider adopting. And one of the things that I would like to do is, I feel that foundational Black Americans don't deserve or shouldn't have to pay city taxes. They should become tax exempt because we paid enough. And so just a little history on that. The Dutch brought us here in the mid 1600s. And the very first thing that we built in this country was this place called the Wall. And we weren't allowed to live in the Wall, in the compounds of the Wall. We had to live outside of the Wall. That wall today is known as Wall Street.
Wall Street.
And so that was one of the first things that we built for the Dutch, when this place was called New Amsterdam. See, the Europeans would call everything they named here, they named it new from someplace old. So there's an old Amsterdam. So this New York became New Amsterdam. You know, when the British came, it became, there was an old York. This became New York, and we built the foundation not only in the South, but a lot of people don't know that New York City has a very, very horrible history when it comes to slavery, chattel slavery here in New York City. And they go out of their way to hide it. It's very well hidden. The only city that had more slaves than New York City was Charleston, South Carolina, where they sold slaves. So with that said, we built the wall. We built the infrastructure of this city. We cleared the path. We were up in the Bronx. We were up in Queens. We were up in Brooklyn, and we paid enough. So that African American burial ground that they dug up in the 90s, you know, that was just one of many places. When 9/11 hit and they started to dig, and they slammed the door shut really quick on this, they found skeletal remains. It didn't come from the buildings because those people were vaporized. So that 9/11, that area was a foundational Black American cemetery as well. And companies were built from slavery in New York City, like Domino Sugar, like Tiffany's. It was so bad that the New York City, the mayor at that time, was talking to city council that New York City should succeed along with the South because the South had so much interest. They were so entwined that they would never get their money back. And a lot of people don't know this. So we paid a hell of a price not to have something as city tax, something as small as city taxes. We should be exempt from paying any type of city tax. They not only sold cows and chickens and things like that on Wall Street, but they sold human beings. They sold slaves on Wall Street. In fact, they walked them from South Street Seaport to Wall Street, and so much that they had to build prisons or chambers right in the street to hold them until they got them to Wall Street. Today, that street is called Chambers Street. It's named after the chambers that they had to build. You know, so when you think of stocks and bonds, which you're really, really looking at, and a lot of people, I urge you, what is a stock? What is a bond? What you're looking at is livestock in bondage. So you had cattle and you had chattel, and we were part of chattel slavery. So, I mean, America has a very horrible history with slavery. I mean, it wasn't just the Confederate. It was, you know, what was done to us under the name of Confederacy was horrible. But let's not act like the United States of American flag was so kind to us either. And all we want at this point is justice. So there's something about, I think there's some 2.3 million foundational Black Americans in New York City. That's a significant number. So, I mean, just hypothetically, we'll say 1 million are working class people. They should be able to save all of their city taxes, which could help, you know, put extra groceries on the table or whatever. But I would suggest that $5 out of each of should come out of their check and go out into a slush fund each week for 5 years. And so you have enough where after 5 years, that's over $1 billion. And we should use that money to invest in small businesses, because contrary to what everyone say, SBA ain't giving us no loans. They just, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we should get our own. We should be able to take care of ourselves. And I'm not trying to say this to be unkind or disparaging, but we have to really pick and choose what type of businesses we want to invest in. So I wouldn't want to invest into a barbershop or a weed dispensary or nothing like that. No foolishness like that. but it should be something that we should invest in, that we could compete with the rest of the world, like coding or like water filtration or something like that. Something that the whole world wouldn't mind reinvesting into the investment that we've already made for ourselves. And then we should be able to do the same thing on a state level and build real schools where we could, because the school system, contrary to what I believe, the school system, contrary to belief, isn't broken. It works just fine. It just wasn't meant to work for us. The school system works. But the problem is it's the curriculum. And I want to touch on you, LaToya, because you said you were a policymaker. This is one of the things that bothers me when folks are getting policies, when other groups get policies, they get the policy. They get, this is the policy, this is the procedure, and we're going to operate within this policy and this procedure. But when it comes to us, it's always something symbolic, like, we a lit candle, we stand for George Floyd, or we stand for Martin Luther King. There's no policy, it's all symbolic gesture. So my question would be, it was a real brief outline that I gave, and this question is going to be all for all three of you. Would you be, if you became city council member tomorrow, would you consider looking at this resolution and adopting it so that we could get ourselves, this has nothing to do with reparations, because that we still owed reparations, but this has everything to do with us keeping what we already have and doing something for ourselves. Would you back that?
So you said a lot, and I want to unpack everything you said. So the quick answer to that is absolutely, I am pro reparations on every level. I think that it is something that is owed to us. I think it will address a lot of the issues. But let's backtrack, before we go into policy, because I talk a lot about this in the community. So you highlighted some really important facts, even many things that I didn't know about the history of New York City. And when you talk about the trauma and the historical aspect of foundational Blacks in this country, we have to take into context how that trauma has shaped how we operate within this system, right? When we think about government and politics, it's a system, right? And systems have functions, right? So Black people have been functioning all throughout parts of these systems in this country, right? So when we look at our culture, legislation is enforced by advocacy, and advocacy comes from an organized unit, an organized discipline unit. And the challenge with what I believe in our culture is the fact is, one, that we don't know our history, right? Many people you don't want to be Black, right? It's not common, like, you just prefer not, because there's a level of guilt and shame that's attached to our trauma that we have not healed or even discussed at a real level. So when you put all of those, and then when you think about the caste systems that have been created amongst our culture, we also have different income brackets. So you have some foundational Blacks that consider themselves Greek more than they consider themselves Black, right? You have some upper middle class, Blacks who probably are a part of sororities and things of that nature. Many people, they have a Greek culture, right? It's not adopted, African culture, Black culture. That's not really the mindset. So the challenge with us organizing and really having strong legislation is that we have not fully come together to understand what our politics is as a collective. And I think ranked choice voting is going to force us to kind of understand that. It's going to get to a level where you're going to have to band together and agree on one principle in order to advance our political agenda, or many people will lose. But, so when you talk about policy can shape social norms, or social norms can shape policy, right? When we think about us and the history of slavery, like the business of slavery created policy for this country, right? So when you think about the opposite, policy influencing social norms, we have to have a level of mobilization of a mental understanding. And so that's why in my campaign, like I take the time out, I take a lot of time out to talk, because I have my district is 66% Black, 75% people of color. And half of my 66% is Caribbean Black, and half of it is, of foundational Black. And you have different income levels within that 66%. And you have to speak to all of that, right? Although all of our issues are the same. And so I think it's important for us to just understand, teach our culture and teach our community how we have to operate as an organized unit in order to create change in legislation, because it's not going to work when you have some Black people, refuting with you the history of Black people in New York, right? We have to get into the weeds. We get into these low-level conversations when that's not the vibration we need to be on. We have to be operating at a certain vibration in order to get certain things passed. And that's a lot of times, fortunately and unfortunately, when you see why we don't get things done. So you mentioned earlier about, the Biden administration implementing a policy not for Black people, although we know that the House was flipped due to the Black culture, right? Why was that? Well, we talked about that before. They were trying to get some type of plan in writing prior to that, and everybody jumped down, rappers and people's backs about that. It's like we there's a part of our culture that likes symbolism. There's a part of our culture that enjoys, because some people are winning in this system. Everyone doesn't want the system to be changed. It's working for a selected few, and those selected few are a part of those functions that's going to continue for it to go, unless we can create a level of momentum to the masses that are well informed to better advocate for the things that we want.
Right. You're absolutely right. Thank you for that. Sheba, you want to add on?
So, as an educator for over 20 years, I've been in schools, and I know that the system is broke. I also know that the system was not made for Black and Latinx students. However, they are the percentage, the huge percentage that makes up the public school systems, and mostly all of the schools, right? It doesn't matter if it's a charter school, public school, Catholic school, private school. A majority of our kids are sitting in those arenas, and they are continuously being omitted in the process of legislation being and policy being made. And it's never an achievement gap. It's an opportunity gap. Because I am a true believer that when people want something to work, they will make it work. But when you can use Black and Latinx kids, and I'm going to fall back and say Black kids, right? When you can use them as the scapegoat because they are the milk and honey for everyone else to, we have to create this new curriculum and we have to create this policy. And most of those policies do not speak to the nature of how our children learn. It doesn't speak to our culture, and it does not speak to how we want our children to feel social emotionally in schools. And I'm going to walk it back a little bit further. When I look at schools, I think of them as schoolhouses. And when I think of a schoolhouse, I think of it being an extension of your home. That's why I call it a schoolhouse. Right. Because even if you don't have all those things that make you comfortable and make you want to engage in school, you should have it at school if you don't have it at home. And so when that doesn't happen, you get children who don't want to attend school. You get kids who do not engage at the level that they would normally if they had everything that they need. And so it is the responsibility of the adults, right, to listen to kids and listen to what they need to be successful. And that's what has been consciously and purposely left out of the conversation forever. You've gotten people who've never taught in schools. You've gotten people who have taught in school, but they have this white supremacist ideology about Black and Latinx kids. And so that influences how policy is made. Prior to Black kids and Hispanic kids or Latinx kids coming into schools, the rules were very lax until our children showed up. And then we had to have dress codes. We had to have discipline codes. We had to have how to handle infractions, and they were punitive. And so now we see that we have a whole generation of kids who have gone from the school to prison pipeline, starting in the 80s, along with the crack epidemic. And now we're at, it's almost like the balloon is about to bust, right? And people are saying, okay, we made a mistake. How do we reimagine schools? You don't have to reimagine schools. Do what you do in areas where kids who don't look like you and I, do it that way. Whatever you're doing there and what programs you're putting out there, put them in our schools. And so when I talk about better funded schools, I'm talking about defunding the police. Because if we defund the police, we can get those social services that our communities need. We can get the services that our children justly deserve and have not been given for generations. And so it does speak to policy, because if you say that you believe in kids and you believe that you want to give them a chance, then give them the chance to have an exceptional education. And it doesn't take much. It takes technology. It takes getting teachers who really believe in kids. It talks to culturally responsive teaching. It talks to restorative justice and leaving out punitive. And because I've seen kids, when I was a pre-K teacher and I had to shut my whole classroom down because one of my kids, a little Black boy, was doing the same thing another Hispanic kid was doing, and everyone was up in arms about what the young Black boy was doing, and I had to come to his defense. Because at the end of the day, if we're going to say we're going to be fair, we're going to be fair across the board. And that's at the end of the heart of me and how I look at society. Level the playing field. Give everyone what they need to be successful. And it's not about it's too hard. No, we've seen in the pandemic what can be done. We've seen this world stop. The world literally stopped for 6 months last year, from March to September. Did it not? It stopped. It stopped, and everyone was shut it in. Now, I wasn't. I was out in the field working. However, what I'm saying is, if you can stop the world during a pandemic and all of a sudden money is flown here and there and everywhere to get services and what are those? Everything that PPE, everything is done, right, through monetary. Why can't we do that now? Why can't we do that with the education system? Why can't we do what's right by kids? Because you know what? Because everyone wants a scapegoat, and our kids have been the historical scapegoat. If you can imagine some of the brilliance I've seen in my classroom, that because I'm only with them for 10 months, I can't go with them from pre-K to 12th grade, right? I can give you an example. A student that I had in pre-K, one of the smartest kids, one of the kindest kids, came from one of the greatest families that I've known. Fast forward, I started this high school, and this is a student. He came up to me. Is your name Miss Simpson? I said, yes. He said, you don't remember me? Now, I had him when he was 3, 4, and 5 years old. So you see, I see this big young man with all his hair, and I looked at the eyes, because the eyes always tell you who that person is. And then I see, the grades. And I'm like, how did this happen? From pre-K to, at that time, 11th grade. What happened from my classroom to 11th grade? What happened? Who didn't see that brilliance? Who just shuffled him along because he was quiet? Because he was a quiet young man. Who said, oh, he's nice, we'll just give him the grade, instead of making him work the way I made him work once I had him in my classroom again? So this is what I'm saying. We can't say it's all about policy. It's about mindsets too. Until you change mindsets, policy that we see now is going to continue to happen. And when you see people who are, as LaToya said, profiting from this organization, this crisis that we are in, they're going to fight us tooth and nails. And that
would you say policy can produce a mindset?
I think that sometimes people who come in with the intentions of doing the right thing get so bogged down with being told no, or tired of being the outside person. They cower. They eventually collapse into the system and say, you know what, I can't fight it by myself. There's not enough people like us. But that's how it used to be. There are too many of us now, like LaToya, like myself, like you, like Shanequa, that's saying, we see y'all and we're tired of it, and we're not going to keep letting y'all get away with it, because our kids deserve more than that. Policy is driven by the will of the people and the strength of the person who is standing up trying to make a difference. And if you get an alliance of people together speaking in one accord, and it's for the best of our children, then I believe that it can happen. Can I just finish this thought? We have to be truly believe that change can happen in order for it to happen. You can't go along with that's too convoluted. That's too complicated. We can't do that anymore. That's gaslighting us. That's gaslighting. That's trying to take us from what we know to be true.
I believe we can make change, and we don't need a lot of people to do it either.
No.
Which is why,
you need the right people, though.
Right, you need the right people, because I'm gonna be honest with you. I as much as I would love to save our entire race, I don't think that can be done. So I tend to build with people who have a similar mindset that I have. I mean, not an identical one, but if you're willing, like our good brother Neely Fuller said, he said, if Black folks are not building together, we ought to stay away from one another, that we're very toxic to each other. And that is because of slavery.
Yeah,
I fully believe that.
There's of course there's truth to everyone's perspective, right? But then, like, the other aspect, like, let's think about, when we think about the concept of the talented 10th, right? Where the talented 10th was supposed to get us out of influence the masses, right? And it didn't happen. So I think I'm concerned about that, in a sense, just because we have to be able to find a way to expand that mindset along the masses. We have to get, and I don't have the right word right now, we have to get to a certain mass of people. So although we don't need everyone, we have 2.3 million, but we may need 2 million. We definitely need more than 10%. So there has to be some type of way that we can use leaders like yourself with podcasts and innovative programming and innovative discussions to tap in and influence that mindset. You asked another question. You said, does policy influence, can policy make outcomes or change something? The answer is yes. Let's think about under Bloomberg administration. Remember, they stopped smoking in restaurants. And people thought that people were going to stop smoking and things of that nature. And then now look at the many years of this policy being implemented. People who really smoke don't even know. It's common for them to just not smoke in a restaurant. So policy can create that change.
I want to jump over because I don't want Shanequa to feel like I'm ignoring her. So I'm gonna ask this question.
No, you ladies are good. I'm just listening and soaking it up. I'm enjoying it.
I'm gonna ask you this question, but this question is for all three of you. And then I guess I'll give you my opinion on it. But do you think, are we or are we not protected by the United States Constitution? I mean, we know we're overly punished by it, but are we protected by it? I'll let you answer that question first.
Okay, well, I wasn't prepared to answer that, but the obvious question is absolutely not. And I guess that so I was jotting down some thoughts and ideas about ways to address this. This is something that I think I share with you, Kevin. I've been studying this since I was 5 years old, since my mom read Addie books to me and told me about slavery. And I grew up very proud to be a Black person. But I think that just in general, our entire Constitution, our entire nation, everything about our nation, it doesn't protect us. We're constantly exploited, exposed, and unprotected, which is why I think we're having this conversation. But we were talking about policies, and I was thinking, I'm struggling with this a little bit because people influence policy and policy influences people. But a lot of times I think what happens is there's not accountability of policies. So Kevin, we had a good discussion before about the Civil Rights Act, right? So that was passed. And then what happened after that, right? The crack epidemic happened after that. That's what happened. That exploited our neighborhoods. And in fact, what they were doing was passing policies in the name of helping Black people, when the policies they were passing was only producing mass incarceration that we're still fighting with now. We're asking things like, where are our fathers? Where are the Black fathers at? Well, they've been imprisoned, right? This is what's happened. Our neighborhoods have been exploited for so many centuries. And so we're not protected. And I think that's where we come together and we try to unite and pull together as much as possible to try to bring protection for our own communities. Because if we sit here and wait and say we want this and not take action, we're not going to get there. It takes leaders like Martin Luther King and Shirley Chisholm and other people that organize for us to see true change in our communities. But the real answer is we're not protected by a constitution. We're not. I'm sure we know that there's an amendment that still considers us as 3/5 of a person. So we're still seen as 3/5 of a person, and they refuse to take that out. Why? Because the policies in our nation still reflects that we're 3/5 of a person. We're still barred from access and from having, right? We're living in two Americas, and sometimes we don't even see it. The reality of it, right? There are two different Americas we're living in, and the America that we're living in does not protect us. The Constitution doesn't. So I think that, there are a lot of ways to change that. I'm a very innovative, out of the box person, but I think that we really need to start understanding that there is a system, and that the system that's working is working the way it's supposed to work, but it's not working for us. I think that as Black people, a lot of times when we have not awakened and we're sort of sleeping, there's not an awareness of what's happening, right? So we're sort of just walking through life and we're just, we're not even aware. We have to raise awareness of the conscience because it's become so numb. We've become so desensitized. Systemic racism it literally operates outside of us. It's so complex. It's so layered, right? That it operates out. We don't have to do anything for it to keep operating. It is a system that operates outside of us. And because we're so ingrained in a system, we've been taught it. We know it. It's like the social contract that we've been born into, with or without opting in. We have to, This is the way our society is. So now what do we do? How do we teach our people this? How do we raise awareness? How do we really start to shape the minds of Black people? And I think that's what needs to happen. I think it's both. I think it's policy. It's also the mindset. It's intergenerational trauma. It's addressing the years of sustained slavery and what it's done to the psyche of Black people. We have to have circles of healing. We have to have conversations like this. Great people like Kevin to keep pushing these conversations in the Black community, and we cannot take no for an answer. We have to keep pushing against the limits so that we can see true change, but we're not protected. And the only way for us to be protected is by forming communities where we protect ourselves. And that's just me. I'm a firm believer in that, because I think, again, if we sit here and we wait, we can complain all day. And we can wait all day, but if we don't take action, if we don't mobilize, if we don't activate, if we don't raise awareness, we're going to still be in the same place that we were at. So policy is important, but we need people, and we definitely need accountability. And that's my take on it.
I totally agree. And I also would love to challenge all of you guys to help me with this resolution and this petition. I could talk to you offline on it, but I wanted to become an instrument of an elected official that's actually running for city council. Where do you stand when it pertains to foundational Black Americans and our issues? I digress. I'm sorry. So LaToya, give me your are we or are we not protected by the Constitution of the United States?
We're not protected. You know, the fact of, we can even look at just last year during this pandemic, when the outcry of the gentleman who was murdered by the officers in Milwaukee. What's his name? Just forgive me.
George Floyd.
Yes, George Floyd, right? So that sparked the outcry. That brought everyone out of the mandated shutdown, and a national mobilization happened. And then all of a sudden, a cry for defunding the police. And then we heard of Breonna Taylor. We saw the other gentleman, what happened in Atlanta, in Georgia, when he was run down. And then you hear this narrative from the advocacy community talking about defund the police. I'm sorry, I have not been a criminal justice advocate for half of my life. I've never been to Albany. I have never mobilized and organized around defunding the police. I am for, to clarify it, reallocation of resources, yes. But the concept of defunding the police is, again, I believe, is a narrative that was created from organized groups outside of our culture, attaching onto a movement for us to address the inequities that exist in criminal justice to create a different outcome. And I find oftentimes that we hold on, and I think I'm getting off of the topic for some reason, but I find oftentimes that we hold on to these slogans, you know, and not really understanding where this is going. And this is why I get excited about policy, because one of the things I tell people when we talk about, okay, why defund the police? You know, I have a very high crime area. I just had a girl a couple of days ago in my district that got shot in the back of her head. Gun violence is very real in my community. Sex crimes are up. Domestic violence is at an all-time high right now. And suicides are up. So what does the concept of defunding police officers have to do to address those issues as it relates? It's not going to stop the excessive force of officers that are still going to be employed. It's not going to stop the shooting of unarmed Black and brown people across this country. So when we talk about these concepts, we need to be clear. And then when we talk about defunding things, there's a lot of agencies we can defund. You know, what's happening with all these tickets that we're getting from the Department of Taxation with these, you know, I don't know how it is in the Bronx or your district, but like every 5 seconds you go, you know, you got tickets.
Defund.
Crazy.
We need to defund the homeless crisis and find permanent housing for these people.
Right. That's
right.
right.
There's a lot of things we can defund.
I'm with you 1,000%. I'm not a fan of defunding the police. I believe it's a slogan. I believe it's a slogan that we didn't come up with. I believe in
it's a way for them to profit off of us again.
I believe and what's happening is law enforcement is now dragging their feet because of that. But
They're
I mean,
dragging their feet because they are being helped. They are the spotlight is put on them because of the years, the new years of them abusing our people. That is what they're upset about. They're upset that they think that defund the police means they're going to lose their jobs. That's not what I believe when I say defund the police. I say defund the police and refund schools. So when I say defund the police, it's not saying abolish the police. I'm saying look at your budget, look at how the waste that is outrageous in the police department, and how the public school system has had billions of dollars taken away from it, and the programs that are needed for our kids to have a quality and exceptional education is taken from them and given to the police. And so that's why I said defund the police and refund the schools.
We need a better word selection. When I hear defund the police, it just means abolish it. That's what it just
reimagine.
So what I'm saying is, this is why there are people, we have discussions where people like myself who does believe in defunding the police and refunding schools, because it is a systemic, outrageous budget that they have now become almost like a military police department instead of the equipment that they have. Who are they going to fight?
You know what's crazy?
It's about the citizens.
I had a guest on my show named Emmanuel Gomez, and Yucko, go back and watch this show. He has like the perfect solution to police accountability, but he can't get legislation passed because it's like it strips power from the police department and it gives it actually to the people. So I mean, when you get a chance when we offline, go into some of the old videos that I have from what we, and look up Emmanuel Gomez. He's very, very interesting. I'm gonna bring him back in the future. But I hear what you're saying, but we need to figure out better words. I mean, like this is what bothers me the most. We are the only people, foundational Black Americans are the only people that we're not even in control of our own problems. We can't even have a solution to our own problems. I've never heard of any other group looking for outside entities to help solve their problem. We're the only people that do that. And so we gotta, first of all, we gotta get into a huddle, and whoever ain't on the field shouldn't be in that huddle, period. You know what I mean? But I'm not a huge fan of new laws because the old ones can't be enforced to protect us. I just feel the reason I even asked about are we or are we not protected by the Constitution, because the obvious answer is no. And what I would love to see us do, which probably is really far to the left, is we need, like Indians, we need to be sovereign. That's my solution. There's nothing wrong with the public school system. There's something wrong with the curriculum. And so the only way we're going to really teach our kids is by teaching our kids without their curriculum. We need our own curriculum. See, when we're left alone, we do great things. We build Wall Streets, Black Wall Streets. We invent things. You know how many inventions foundational Black America. So the other running narrative is we have no culture. We've created so much and given it away so freely. The number system that the lotto system that we know today came from foundational Black people playing numbers. We started a number system. We started so many other things.
But they were appropriated and literally stolen from us too, Kevin. They were stolen from us.
Oh yeah, but we've always created more. You know, we've created so much. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's almost hypocritical because at the end of the day, I do live in this system. I can't avoid it. So I got to do the best I can within the system. But the reality is, how do we make a system that we need to create a system separate from the system that we're already in for us? That's the only way we're going to have our own reality. And you know what's crazy, guys? I'm going to have to do a part 2 to this because I'm already over an hour. And I want to thank you guys. I really want to, if you don't mind, I would love for all 3 of you to kind of take a look at what I have as a resolution for City Council. I'm doing a petition for the state and on a congressional level. You know, there's no right or wrong answer when we communicate, just communication. And I've learned so much from you ladies. I think you are remarkable.
Thank you.
I wish y'all so much well on your runs, and anything that I could do, even on a financial level, we could sit down and we could strategize. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kevin. We appreciate you so much. Thank you for having me.
And I promise we're gonna bring you guys back. Maybe I could bring you. Maybe we'll come back and I'll bring Emmanuel Gomez and we could talk about what police reform really should look like.
That sounds good.
Fine.
That's good.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Shanequa, thank you so much for the invitation and reaching out. Really
Thank
appreciate
you,
the work
LaToya.
and leadership you guys are doing. Kevin and future councilwoman, congratulations to you all.
I just want to say one thing to all my viewers that are in Queens. There's a special election on Tuesday. Can you tell me again what's your district? I mean, the areas?
District 31, communities of Far Rockaway, Auburn, Edgemere, Laurelton, Rosedale, Springfield Gardens, JFK Airport. LaToya Benjamin, February 23rd, really important. The time is now for us to be the change that we say that we want to be. So LaToyaBenjamin.com, Facebook, Twitter, social media. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And if you need anything between now and Tuesday, go get out and vote. You need feet, hands. You could count on me. I'll come out there and support you.
Awesome. I'll hold you to that. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Kevin.
ladies, for being on Kap.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night, everyone. Thanks, Kevin.
All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Peace, y'all.
Hey, switch it up. Switch. Yeah. Don't give a fuck.